Okay, hello, Fred Cerullo.
Hey Sky, how are you?
Thank you. Thank you for joining us on Life Before the Virus.
I'm thrilled to be on this. I've grown to love your show, so I look forward to all your guests and to just hear how people are experiencing this period of time. So thank you for doing this.
Thank you. A lot of business and real estate that you're connected to, and I'd love to hear how that's all been affected and impacted since the virus.
Sure. I mean, look, know, it's hard to imagine, that a month ago how life was for all of us. I mean, I think the most important thing that sort of overshadows all of this is sort of the loss of life. We all know people, whether in our inner circle and families, who weren't able to survive this battle, or certainly in the rungs that then go out from our lives. So that's obviously the thing that everybody is sort of connected to and thinking about, how did we get from 4 or 5 weeks ago to today? But on the day-to-day basis, and aside from that sort of incredible and profound reality, we're just trying to make life work. The different aspects of my life, the different hats I wear, have been affected incredibly, as city planning, based on the mayor's sort of declaration of emergency. All the land use processes and clocks have been frozen in time. So the commission has not met since mid-March, when all these restrictions started to come into place. I have to say, to the credit of the staff who are all working at home, they're still processing important land use information and documentation that hopefully will be able to then get put into the next phase when we start to realize whatever recovery is, and when the clock starts ticking again for going back to public review and public hearings. On the bid side, when you represent the world's central business district, it's a very odd and, in a way, disturbing reality to see the streets so empty and our stores closed. But there are very many people who are still trying to make the world around them seem as normal as possible. Some of our restaurants and delis and other food businesses are still functioning with takeout and delivery, and we're helping to promote them. We're in contact with the property managers of the buildings on a regular basis about issues of concern. And I think the most important thing, and I tip my hat to our own team, but in the essential nature of our work focused on public health and safety, our sanitation sweepers and our public safety officers are still in the field every day, sweeping, removing graffiti, cleaning, and patrolling to keep those people who are in the neighborhood feeling safe and not in some sense of chaos, because it's like a silent chaos. And we're still planting and doing those kinds of essential services. So the neighborhood has a look and feel, although it's empty. But there's a hope there. I think we're a strong, resilient city and people, and we're just excited about thinking about when we can go back to a day where we can walk down the street and say hello to our neighbors and walk in and out of our stores and spend money and help them get back on their feet.
So, what issues do you face now compared to your day-to-day issues that you were dealing with before the virus?
Well, that's really good. I think, we've always been a place to turn to support business. That primarily has been about just promoting what the business was doing, this special, this sale, this great deal. On the commercial property side and the buildings, it's about dealing with sort of quality of life issues in the street to help improve what a streetscape is. And today we're trying to connect businesses to staying alive and surviving. So all of these programs that the government is having, the webinars that are being provided for business owners, we're trying to connect those people, assist if they need it with applications for funding and grants and loans. Very different story. We also have spent the past year doing a lot of public space management. And of course, now that is not encouraged, even though it's outside. But the idea of people sitting on tables and chairs within 2 or 3 feet from each other is not a situation that we're all experiencing now. So we're planning on, well, what are the phases to the new normal, and how are we going to be prepared to manage that circumstance, which will be new to us like everyone else. And, you know, we want to be ahead of the curve on that. So that's the kind of thing we're focusing on internally right now, and just making sure that our staff in the street remains safe and healthy, because they're still out there doing their thing. And all of our thoughts, prayers go out to those frontline workers in every borough across the globe who are really working to save people's lives now and make sure everybody is as healthy as they could be.
And you mentioned some of the beautification projects, like you
Yes.
do beautiful plantings in and around the Grand Central area.
Yes.
With spring coming, are those plantings, for example, something that will still happen?
Yes, they are still happening as part of our maintenance requirements and operations. They've been deemed to be part of the essential function of the company. So if you went right now out into the Grand Central bid through Midtown East, you would see tulips and daffodils planted throughout the neighborhood, as if it was a more typical day than we're really experiencing. And we've actually already received in the last couple of days some wonderful emails to our company mailbox with people thanking us for what we do and how it made them feel just to be outside and to see the color and maybe a little sense of normalcy that we're sort of craving right now. So yes, we will continue unless, you know, that's an issue that changes in the future. Right now, we're trying to be a stabilizing force in the neighborhood. And I think that's what all bids do. I know I can speak for all of us, 76 of us across the 5 boroughs, that we're working very hard to support the businesses and the residents. And yes, even some of the visitors who are still coming to see New York, obviously not at the same numbers, but people love New York and they don't stay away. That we're out there and we're trying to keep a strong and vital community, even under these very, very difficult circumstances.
Now, with Grand Central as a big tourist destination, you're still seeing tourists come in during this time?
No, there are just some visitors who are in New York. The numbers obviously are quite dramatically low. You know, we don't manage the terminal itself, but for obvious reasons, right down to our name, the terminal is the heart and soul of the business improvement district. You know, obviously our transit systems are operating on very modified schedules. I think what the MTA and Metro North are doing in terms of the cleaning and trying to continue to have service so the people who do need it and need to take it have that opportunity to do it in the safest way possible. And we commend them for that work. Obviously, getting people around the city is the only way to continue to get, you know, any economic activity that will exist. But it's quite different these days. But when you see the neighborhood and the empty sidewalks, but you look at the buildings, including Grand Central and its iconic, historic, beautiful architecture, and you see what's happening around it, there is a sense of hope that someday we'll look back on this and wonder how we actually got through it. But I think it's because we're all on the same page with making sure that we succeed in keeping our city, you know, the greatest city in the world.
And as the planning commissioner for the city,
Yes.
what do you see from the real estate building perspective? You mentioned it's on pause right now, but what is your insight and opinion on what's going to happen moving forward in the whole industry?
You know, that's a really good question. I mean, I believe that anytime we look back on history and we look at difficult times, whether they were just budget crises or there were other crises around the city, that made us have to sort of reboot. The real estate industry was always at the front of the line in terms of how they could be a partner in government in the restoration of sort of the city's stability. And I don't expect that to be different now. And both real estate industry and labor have always been the two industries that have really stepped up to the plate. And I have no expectation that that wouldn't be true today. But what I do think we're going to see, and I don't know the answer to this now, obviously, because this is still a living, breathing process for us. But, you know, learning, I think we're all learning what needs we may have in the future for other crises like this. Will that change how we use our space, how we develop buildings? You know, the idea of how we don't, I'm using this as an example because in a sort of conversation with people in this period of time, you know, will doorknobs ever really be needed? You know, do we move to construction ideas that involve more automatic things that, so we're not touching everything that we need? I don't know, but I think there are certainly people smarter than me out there right now trying to figure out what the future holds for design and architecture and building that, like post Sandy, with resiliency and other issues that change the course of development, particularly along the waterfront areas, that we may see because of what comes out of, you know, the coronavirus situation that we're all experiencing. The difference here is that we're not alone in this one, and it's going to be interesting to see how other cities in the world respond to it too. And I think we're always a leader. There's no question. I think the world will look to the United States and look to New York City particularly about how are they going to handle this. But I also think there's probably lessons we could learn from other cities around the globe that'll be helpful to us as we look into the long-term future.
And, you know, daily the governor has his press conferences, and the mayor and the president. And who are some of the leaders that you speak with on a regular basis, or
Sure.
where do you get your information from?
Sure. Well, you know, we're all keyed in to all of these outlets. The governor's office is doing an amazing job in feeding the public and its public-private partners with information. You know, our direct daily relationship is obviously with the City Department of Small Business Services, Commissioner Bishop and his team. And of course, our council member, we're very lucky to be represented by Keith Powers, who I know has been a guest on your show. He has been awesome. And our borough president, who has facilitated Manhattan bid, you know, web virtual meetings to learn what we are hearing at the ground level in our neighborhoods, what our needs are. So, you know, we're in communication with, you know, Speaker Johnson. So we've been really very, very lucky at the state and the local level as to what our needs are, what our business needs are. And the Bid Association, which is the organization that we're all a part of, are working very closely with the administration and each other to come up with ideas that we have submitted and partnered with to come up with good advocacy for our business community in terms of how they're going to get out of this and what important things could be happening as we look to ahead to hopefully a time where business will begin to operate more normally.
And now the governor has a mandate that everyone outside has to wear a face covering. And I've actually, when I've gone on walks in my neighborhood, I've seen signs in storefronts that say you can't enter if you're not wearing a mask. And how has that come up in conversation? And
well, the bid, obviously, it's actually the discussion of the day. We've been very fortunate that early in the process, we were able to get some masks for our field staff. So they've been fully gloved and masked in the work that they've been doing in the community. And that obviously was a priority for us. Now that this is actually a requirement for business to operate, essentially, essential businesses, you know, the bids are discussing how perhaps we can collectively support our business community about getting access to masks for those who don't have it. because that, if that's the reason a business can't reopen or can't participate in the economic process, then that's really unfortunate. We know that they are few and far between right now, but we are working on that issue because although we hope that people have been smart enough to be wearing masks while they've been out for their own safety and for the safety of others they may interact with, now that it's a requirement, it becomes really important for us to figure out how do we access them and how can we distribute them safely. But I know even out here, on, I live on Staten Island, as you know, and I have, our sort of the local supermarket where I have done my shopping for the past month. They've had a box of gloves for people. They haven't been providing masks, but for the same reason, they wanted people in the store to at least have gloves on as they were touching things and products and the cart. So I think this is part of our new normal. Even out in the street, if you're walking by yourself, I heard the governor say, it's fine when you're walking by yourself, but you get to an intersection and then there were 4 other people there. So make sure you have your mask. I think it's probably smart, even though it's a little unnerving that this is the world we're in. But health has to be first for us to survive any of this other stuff that's going on around us.
Yeah, there's an organization that started up Survivor Corps, which
Yes.
is on Facebook. Yeah, and they're collecting an army of volunteers to donate blood and plasma if they've recovered from COVID. So I think one initiative that's ahead of the curve. And I've been helping out Diana Barrett, the founder. We connected, and I find that that's like one initiative that makes me excited because it's about life after the virus and how to get the economy back up and going.
Sky, I think that example is a perfect one to sort of highlight how our people react to these things. I mean, at the beginning, it's all confusing and none of us like change, and none of us like to change our manner and the way we do things. But what we always see, especially in this city, is how people step up to participate in doing the right thing for other people. We've seen that in every crisis, especially in crisis, but we see that generally, the good nature of people, even those who are going through some, really devastating times. Many of the survivors have lost loved ones, and they're taking their time instead of just living in their own grief. They're helping other people. And I think that's always the most important and hopeful part of New York City's residents and businesses. We have businesses donating food to the frontline people, in Midtown East. Even if they're donating the food to other neighborhoods, they want to help. And I'm not saying we're particularly unique in that because many cities do that, but I think we're the most special. I think that's safe to say.
Fred, it was wonderful to talk to you and to catch up about everything. And I appreciate everything that you do. And I know everyone does for the partnership, for bids, and with the City Planning Commission. Thank you so much.
Sky, it was a pleasure, and continued good health to you and your family and everybody who is watching today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one.